Hi, everyone. Welcome back to reading. We are going to continue talking about plot. Last time we talked about the introduction, which was characters and setting. And today we are going to talk about rising action and conflict and the climax. So let's first talk about what is rising action and conflict in a story. So, this is when a problem comes up in the story, some kind of trouble, stress, or tension is happening with one or more of the characters. Well, let's think. When does a conflict, some sort of a problem, come up in the story A Hero's Name? And I know we only read it yesterday, so I'm going to review part of the story with you now. Okay, so on the end of page 4, it says, yes, Frank was having a perfectly good week at school, right? Everything was going well. On Thursday, his teacher stayed home sick. A different teacher called the class roll. Francis, is there a Francis Smith here? He asked. Of course, Frank knew his name was Francis and that Frank was just his nickname. His parents called him Frank, and all his friends did too. Bobby, though, who was new in school, yelled out to the whole class that Francis was a girl's name. At recess, Bobby made fun of Frank. Francis is a girl's name. Francis is a girl's name, he called. Frank didn't care what Bobby thought, but he didn't like to be made fun of. Okay, so what is the conflict of the story? Okay, we're going to practice filling this out because you are going to do this later too. The conflict of the story is that Bobby is making fun of Frank's name, right? That is the conflict, okay? And it's also the rising action because he continues to do it at recess, right? It keeps happening. And this is a problem for, in this case, the character Frank in the story. Okay. So that is the conflict. The conflict is the problem or a source of stress or some tension or just some trouble that is happening in the story. All right. So now let's continue talking about the pyramid. The next thing on the pyramid is climax. Okay. What is the climax of a story? So this is when the problem is at its absolute worst and it can sometimes feel really exciting, like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? And it's almost like you're holding your breath, wondering what's going to happen. The climax is what happens right before, usually it's right before things starting getting a little bit better for the character that's in conflict, okay? It's when the problem is at its worst, at its highest point, okay? That's why it's at the very top of the pyramid because it's right at the top, okay? It's things have been getting worse and worse and worse until they get the worst, okay? All right. So let's think, right? What is the climax in the story A Hero's Name? Well, let's go back to our story. We were right over here. Okay, let's keep reading. At home, Frank asked his mother about his name. His mother explained that Francis with an I was usually a boy's name. Francis with an E was usually a girl's name. She was just about to say something else when the family dog, Dino, limped through the back door. Dino lifted his paw. Frank found a thorn and pulled it out. By then, he and his mother had both forgotten about his name. On Friday, Bobby kept at it. Francis is a girl's name. Francis is a girl's name. Their regular teacher, who was back at school, told Bobby to apologize. And then the teacher had an idea. Okay, so we're going to pause there for today. So I'm telling you now that this is when the problem is at its worst. Okay, the teacher is back in school, the regular teacher, right? And guess what? Frank goes back to school, and what happens? That's right. Bobby is still making fun of Frank. He's not stopping. So that is the climax. Then it's when it's at its worst. And you're just kind of thinking as the reader, like, when is this going to get better? When is the problem going to stop? So that's what we'll write. We'll write Bobby keeps making fun of Frank even when the teacher is back. Okay, guys, so I want you to read in either your story about the tortillas, the raining tortillas, or the story about do not eat that. Find the conflict, the problem in the story, and the climax when the story is at its most exciting. Good luck.